Hi everyone, this is Dragon GGY. This is the operator Hindsight for the CNY banner co-runner 6-star Blaze, the Igniting Spark. Well, it's late, but I think for good reasons. Let's get started anyways. Blaze, the Igniting Spark is a 6-star primal caster in the caster class. Trail the Archetype deals arts damage and can deal elemental damage under certain circumstances. The last 6-star primal caster, Nymph, was just 8 episodes ago. So let's go over a quick review. The archetype is a derivative of the core caster archetype, supposedly single target focused and specializing in dealing E damage during elemental bursts. Unlike Nymph, who's a necrosis primal caster, Blaze is a burn primal caster. We just went through burn in detail in the last episode. In short, it provides resistance shred support to improve the quality of arts damage. Dealing E damage in this burn system is usually supplementary instead of the main focus here. They usually comes with short cycle, short duration burst damage to better fit the short burst window. Blaze talents. Talent 1, whenever an enemy enters burn burst, immediately deals 350% of attack as E damage to the enemy, 380% at potential 5, and heals self for 12% of max HP, 15% at potential 5. This self-healing negates the anti-healing status, otherwise known as Amity, which is something relevant for Talent 2. The talent is a high attack scale damage to make the burn burst triggers more deadly. It deals 2,975 E damage off skill, adding to the inherent 7k, so the total would be around 10k, and it further scales with attack modifiers in her skills. It's a major source of E damage from Blaze, especially when her skill 1 and skill 2 doesn't actually deal additional E damage, and it doesn't require her to do anything, which makes this talent pretty good at supporting teammates as well. Her skill 3 is an ammo based skill, so it persists to provide higher attack and higher damage consistently. But at the end of the day, its effectiveness is tied to the burst efficiency. In other words, you want a good burn enabler who can trigger burn more frequently. And finally, for the HP recovery, depending on your perspective, it's either synergizing with Talent 2 and self-damage in skill 2 and 3, or making up for them, because in my opinion, she's completely fine without doing damage to herself, so maybe it's for her character, I guess. But that will lead us to Talent 2. When defeated, becomes downed instead and does not retreat. Gains 6,000 barrier. Cannot attack or be healed when downed, but recovers 3% of max HP per second, 3.5% at potential 3, and once HP is full, revives and stuns nearby enemies for 5 seconds. The talent seems straightforward, but there are quite the details that we can discuss. So when triggered, it will terminate any skill progress, removing all the buffs on herself, and enters the downed state. During both the down and revive animation, gains untargetable and undying to avoid being defeated accidentally when transitioning between the states. During the down state, blocks become 0, gains disarm, which means cannot attack, and silence, which means cannot use skills, but she can recover SP like normal. She also gets anti-healing, which makes her Amity, but like Amity, she can still recover HP passively, like from this talent itself, and selves like Bards, Thorn's Altar Skill 1, etc. And like we introduced, Talent 1 can also heal her through the anti-healing. You may have heard about the CCB3 Blaze perma-stun strat, and the mechanic behind it is that Kelsit can actually heal Amity units. It's just that among them she only selects monster as a viable target. But if the target becomes Amity as her healing projectile is flying, that healing would register, and that is exactly how that strat worked. Back to the talent. When Blaze's HP reaches 100% at any point, removes all barrier and returns to the normal state, dealing AoE stun to all enemies in a 1.0 tile radius. This talent can be triggered over and over. Basically, Blaze only truly dies when she reaches 0 HP again during the down state. For its implications, it takes 33.3 seconds for Blaze to naturally fully revive, 28.6 seconds with potential 3 or above. Each burn burst during the process expedites it by about 4 seconds. The talent allows her to take more aggressive positions, theoretically. So in easier fights, Talent 1 can keep herself sustained without a healing source, and Talent 2 helps to get her back into the fight when it gets harder, since both Skill 2 and Skill 3 cycles at around 30 seconds. In an optimal situation where she gets down right after the skill ends, she can use the shield to help her survive until the next skill. And I do have to say, a fixed 6000 barrier is very tough. This is 3.6 times of her max HP, and in debuff game modes where she can get down to 3-digit HP, it's gonna be even more impactful in those situations. But the key problem here is that you have HP loss in skill 2 and 3, which are not fatal most of the time, and you also have HP recovery in talent 1. There's no active control as to when exactly she's down, so it's not really in your control unless you deliberately expose her to fatal damage. It's great survival talent, yes, but you do need to be up to be dealing damage, right? She doesn't die, but she also doesn't do much when she's downed. So it doesn't really provide a better damage environment for her. And at the end of the day, it's not like she's very good at doing damage solo. So in practice, the talent is more for some extra room for error. And finally, for the stun, most of the time it's also just for keeping her safe for the first few seconds when she's back up. To actively use it as a perma-stun tool, you need to have consistent damage that can down her, which is not that common in practice. CCP3 was when it all aligned, but that doesn't happen always, especially when there are stun immune enemies. The module for Blaze has just released in CN and I've played with it a little bit. Straight update, damage dealt to enemies in elemental burst increased to 110%, upgrades go to talent 1, the burst damage scale is increased by 70%, now sitting at up to 450%. The healing is increased by 3% and now Blaze gains 10% attack for 10 seconds after the burst. For the base, it's a massive boost to Primal Caster's damage during the burst window. It applies to both arts and E damage. And as a niche note, they do get that damage reduction on any burst triggers. So Blaze can do more damage during Necrosis burst, Nymph can do more damage in burn burst. Doesn't happen often, but yeah. For upgrades, the first part is the increase to the spike damage on burn burst, and it scales with both the base effect 110% and the 10% more attack modifier added to the talent, which brings up the damage massively. Self-heal is okay, but less impactful. The attack plus applies before calculating that 450% spike damage, which is certainly welcomed, and that 10-second duration covers the entire burst window. That's perfect. Clearly, this is a damage-based module, and it honestly does its job great. Blaze's off-skill burn burst spike damage increases from a little less than 3k to 4.7k, which is a 58.3% increase, and the highest base skill 3 damage is increased from 89k to 113k, a 26.7 improvement. Sure, the 10% attack modifier is quite diluted when in skill 2 and skill 3, but for giving her higher damage quantity on top of quality, this module is solid. Recommend level 3 if you use her in a burn team. For skills, my recommendation is skill 3 over skill 1, slightly over skill 2. Skill 3 is a strong arts and elemental damage hybrid burst skill with great AoE, but like Nymph's skill 3, it demands a burn enabler for its full effect as it doesn't do burn damage at all. Skill 1 is an AFK skill that can achieve seamless coverage at M1 and beyond. It has a snapshot mechanic which you can take advantage of to increase the skill's effectiveness at relative ease, but it does have a limited range and effectiveness against high resistance enemies. Skill 2 is the solo skill for Blaze. It has a massive attack range, but its effectiveness is tied to enemies' pathing, movement speed, and the terrain, and comes with a bad synergy with attack speed buffs. Skill 1 selects the operator with the highest max HP within range, dealing 70% of attack as arch damage and 30% of arch damage dealt as burn damage to all enemies in a 1.7 tile radius every second for 20 seconds. This is a A/16 auto skill. The stats laid out in the skill part are still the pre-module ones. I will have the improved numbers compiled at the end of the skill section. The skill deals 546 arts DOT and 164 burn damage per second towards 0 resistance enemies. So even for 0 resistance, it will take 7 seconds to trigger a burn burst. The fire ring has a 1.7 radius, which means the surrounding A tiles most of the time. It can be applied to summons, operators only. The skill does use a snapshot mechanic. Notice how the duration is laid out in the skill description instead of the duration section, which is very similar to how Alchemist skills do, and can have 100% uptime starting from Mastery 1, where the firing's duration will surpass the sum of the downtime and the cast time. The fire ring used the cached attack stat on cast, which is similar to Alchemist skills as well, and surprisingly, the ring's damage doesn't change if a new cast only refreshes the duration and not its target. Knowing that, you can then mega buff Blaze before her first cast and keep the ring target consistent afterwards, and the fire ring will always use that buffed attack stat for its damage. Keep in mind that it's only possible when you have 100% uptime though. Light alchemical units and applied fire ring will persist after Blaze leaves the field, which also includes her entering this down state with talent 2. The damage is also regarded as a non-traceable source damage. How does it work in practice though? Well, the skill is all about DOT, and the higher the enemy's resistance or damage reduction, the longer it takes for the actual burst, which is the key part of the damage. If you use it on a lane holder, having that damage in a backloaded pattern is certainly a burden to their survival. So really, to use this skill, do consider giving her buffs before going AFK. It does what DOT skills do should you want to use it on damage instance-based enemies as well. Usual candidates for this skill are lane holders like defenders, and also ambushers who keep enemies around without blocking. Do be careful with the targeting though. Putting operators with higher max HP than the current receiver will make her switch targets. This skill is surprisingly useful for early game because it's doing the same thing as your old defender plus a lava approach, but for veteran players it's more of a unique AFK option with the buff shenanigan. One off buff and you're good to go. Sometimes it's worth the effort. But at the end of the day, the skill still has limited range, just the 3x3 grid, and all the efforts you spend with placing down all the buff providers, it may still end up not as effective as, say, Martial skill 2, or just use skill 2 from the last episode, right? Now, skill 2 attack range changes into the Saria skill 2 range. Attack interval plus 0.9 seconds into 2.5 seconds. Attack plus 150%, attacks 3 enemies at once. When attacking, loses 5% HP and sets a burning field at the location of the target. Passing enemies have 50% less movement speed and takes 35% of Blaze attack as arts damage and 30% of the arts damage dealt as burn damage every second. This is a 23/36 35 seconds manual skill. Numbers are shown below. Blaze does 1957 DPH. The burning field deals 685 per second and further translates to 205 burn damage per second. Her talent 1 burst damage gets further amplified to about 7.4k during skill, and the total skill damage as an art and element hybrid to 0 resistance is about 80k. For mechanics, the burning fields don't stack and do not deal damage to aerial enemies. All burning fields are removed on skill end, including when she retreats and it's down. The HP loss on attack can down her. Pros for picking this skill: wide attack range, that plus multi-target, which increases the efficiency of setting burning fields. High attack modifier, which is a great boost to Talent 1's damage. Combined with the inherent 7k burst damage, enemies would take 14k plus damage on burn burst trigger. Extra deadly. But there are major problems with this skill. The biggest one, in my opinion, is that only the burning field do burn damage as DOT, and not her powerful main attacks. It faces quite a lot of the high attack modifier potential, so high DPH on normal attack, but low burn damage buildup. Enemies with low HP often dies before the burn trigger is even possible, making the E damage part to it almost irrelevant. She's losing HP from her attacks, but cannot recover HP from Talent 1 due to the low burn efficiency. That sometimes gets worse with attack speed buffs, because while attack speed doesn't affect the burn DOT, she loses HP from attacks even faster. The burn distribution is just awkwardly laid out. Now that we know the burning field is the key, how effective is it? Well, Unfortunately, it's partly dependent on enemy and terrain. If enemies move fast, Blaze's increased attack interval may sometimes not keep up with them, so it's best if there are some other targets to help set the fields first. Sure, these problems can be optimized by using a block unit, but then it makes the good range and the slow effect on the field less meaningful, which kind of reflects the problem in design. So a solo functioning skill, yes, but its design is honestly quite awkward, and the more you use it, the more it feels off, even in general contents. It works, but just leaves much more to be desired in my opinion. Skill 3. Attack range changes, attack plus 115%, attack interval minus 1.3 seconds into just 0.3 seconds. Normal attacks now deal AoE damage in a 1.7 tile radius. If the target is under the burst effect of burn damage, deals an additional 80% of attack as elemental damage. Loses 3% of max HP per second. The skill has 25 ammo and will gain 2 ammo whenever an enemy enters burn burst on the field, but doesn't exceed the 25 cap. Can be manually deactivated. This is a 20/30 manual skill. The skill range is similar to Marcio's skill 3, but unlike that skill where the range can move closer to Marcio when on the edge of the map, this is a fixed actual attack range for Blaze. The stats are shown in the table. The highest potential for this skill is 89k, more to dig into in just a bit. The skill follows the typical short cycle short duration design of burn related skills. Attack interval shortens to 0.3 seconds, so all 25 base ammo can be dispensed in just 7.5 seconds, which is a great fit for the 10-second burn burst window. The full cycle is about 38 seconds for this 20/30 skill, which is very similar to Dagenbresh's skill 3, not only in cycle time, but also in base damage, so it definitely matches the impression of a burst damage skill. When all the ammo hit a target in burst, that will be a close to 1-to-1 odds to element damage distribution, so in a way you can say that the difference between the actual damage dealt is significant with or without a burn burst effect, unlike Nymph where it's odds or element. You get the chance for odds and element here. Blaze deals AoE splash in a 1.7 radius during the skill. That plus the ammo gain gimmick gives a very clear favoritism towards AoE scenarios. However, it does not prioritize enemies in burst. In practice, the rather long reaching range can lead to her switching targets, which is not optimal, so try to plan your positioning carefully in advance. Again, the skill does not benefit from attack speed buffs much, as it's an ammo-based skill that already deals damage fast enough. Similar to skill 2, the self-damage over time can down her, but if you use her normally, it shouldn't matter too much, as the ammo are spent rather fast. Just remember to end the skill manually if you don't need them, or have a medic to sustain her if you want to keep the high attack up for Amplified Talent 1. Obviously, skill 3 wants a partner, and last time we touched on her combo with Yu, so this is more of a recap. Yu's skill 2 is more for less than 5 key targets that can be blocked and doesn't exceed his tanking ability. Skill 2 deals more damage in comparison and converges enemies into being blocked by Yu, which is perfect for making use of Blaze AoE damage. Yu's skill 3, on the other hand, is for when there are a large number of enemies and better makes use of Blaze's long reach. Problem for this combo is the low burn damage enchantment. It takes 7 hits to trigger burst for non-boss enemies and 14 for boss, which is quite a cost for Blaze skill 3 with its ammo mechanic. So the only way to make it a good deal is having a lot of targets. Spending 7 ammo to burst 1 target is 2 ammo back, but spending 7 ammo to burst 4 targets is 8 ammo back, so its best shot is against waves of enemies instead of mowing down 1 or 2, which I guess Nymph would be better at. And finally, Yu's skill 3's duration is long enough to cover 2 Blaze skill 3 uses. Not bad. Other ways to use this skill, like we briefly mentioned, you can put her on idle to keep the attack modifier while other members who are more efficient in causing bursts do their jobs. For example, Megacore caster striking full map with Yu, and she supplement the extra burst damage with Talent 1. You can also use it solely as an arts damage skill. Generally, like Nymph's skill 3, I wouldn't recommend that because you lose out on your Talent 1. But then, on the flip side, it does have its pros. It's pumping out 42k damage in 7.5 seconds, so that will be around 5.6k DPS, which isn't all that common for an art skill. It has fast cycles and a long reach, which usually isn't in the checklist of casters either. Personally speaking, that is from my own use experience. If you simply want a caster for daily, I think the skill is pretty serviceable. A couple more clicks may be needed though. As in conclusion, skill 3 favors situations where there's one or few more high quality enemies, like elite and bosses, as well as waves of surrounding enemies, so that she gets to maximize her AoE and ammo refill advantages. Typical examples are bosses in Chapter 10, Chapter 12, Chapter 13, where they come with ammo packs around them. This skill is just designed to do AoE, so not very outstanding when it comes to single target damage and efficiency. Sometimes you need to look out for switching targets as well. Overall, the advantage for this skill is rather narrow. Than that, plus her reliance on the 1+1 combo definitely impacted her performance. Here are the module stats. Green boxes are where I think hold the key improvements. First of all, high damage boost to the Talon 1 spike damage. That's almost the same damage of the whole Necrosis burst when combined with the inherent 7k. Same goes for the amplified ones in skill 2 and 3. That base effect and the high damage scale certainly put in the work. If all the ammo hits a target in burst, the total damage goes up to 113k in 7.5 seconds for skill 3. Imagine that. So definitely the module makes her better where she's good, so if her favorite scenario does come up, she would fare a better chance at securing her place as the optimal solution. Since we brought up Synergies earlier, before we wrap up, let's discuss a little bit about her Synergies in the burn system. For the Yu and Blaze duel, we've extensively talked about them. So in hindsight, I say that Yu wants a damage dealer with great attack speed buff potentials, while Blaze wants an enabler with a more flexible range and efficiency. So they are kind of like not playing to the strengths of each other well enough, which is unfortunate, but I guess you can say that also leaves some room for future components. For other possible combos, Viviana Delta does have decent single target burst efficiency, so as long as a burst trigger is possible, Viviana plus Blaze as a duo is definitely doing more damage than Yu plus Blaze. It's dependent, but overall more single target oriented. Ifrit Delta is mostly inferior to Yu, their kits don't really have great synergy, and it's also hard to coordinate their range, especially when the duo don't have any CC or blocking. And finally, Bobbing, the 5-star burn ritualist, I'd say still mostly a downgrade from Yu. His efficiency against bosses is not enough, the range is kinda also awkward, so I guess our options are still rather limited. In hindsight, Blaze the Igniting Spark is an E damage dealer specialized in AoE burst damage, despite her being in an archetype which typically does single target damage. Her Talon 1 provides a full map spike damage amp to burn burst triggers, and Talon 2 provides a unique survival talent that allows her to come back without retreating. Both talents also work well in a team environment. They make burn burst deadlier, and she can benefit from triggers to revive herself faster. All her skills have AoE aspect to them, has great burst damage capability, especially for skill 3, but is relatively weak when working solo. All her skills also benefit rather little from attack speed buffs, which limits her performance and applications. And so far, she has yet to make many noticeable performances. The only one would be the perma-stun strat in CB3, which did make top risk, just not the final low ops roster. For her final daily rating, I have her at 5. Skill 1 has the unique snapshot gimmick. While it does fall a bit short compared to the popular picks nowadays, I'd still say her skill 2 and 3 as a generic odds damage pick is serviceable, with skill 3 having that wave shedding potential in harder stages with the burn team. And I think the overall experience is similar to Nymph, so it eventually lines up at 5. I do think skill 3 is a little bit underestimated though, and the experience of using it solo is better than skill 2 in my opinion. For advanced, my take is 6. I think she's like 5.5 before the module, and the module sort of solidifies 6. While Nymph had her skill 2 fear that was excellent as a single target crowd control tool, Blaze is putting everything on her hybrid damage, with some implication from her Talon 2 stun. In IS, not benefiting from attack speed is a large disadvantage. Primal Caster's selling point, the high quality damage, is also under heavy contention with true damage dealers. Those are especially true in IS-5. In the latest IS-6 though, damage reduction on bosses aren't that crazy anymore. There's no more damage reduction from the Mark of the Epoch, which is a nerf to both E-damage dealers and true damage dealers. The removal of the Lamp of Wishes means all its associated mechanics like the mandatory hand relic and the stable requirement of king relics and attack speed are all gone, which makes attack speed less of a judging standard. The introduction of ammo and E-damage related relics helps a little bit as well, and the skill 1 and 2 now sees users as the countermeasure to all the damage incidence-based enemies in the theme, so she definitely fares better in IS-6, but the meta is still shaking up, so I guess we'll have to wait and see. Whether or not she'll have an edge in debuff game modes though, depends quite a lot on the burn enabler. But regardless, her damage quality, AoE ability, and the long reach among casters will be part of her viability. The Talent 2 perma-stun is not consistent, and CCP3 was indeed when it all aligned. The Originium Storm is able to take her down consistently. There's only one blue box where everyone converges, as well as a proper projectile trajectory for the right timing from Celt's healing, not mentioning all the level gating and steps required for the strat. For numbers, her cycles and burst DPS is pretty good. Skill 3 is a very powerful skill. My main complaint is still about how skill 2 was designed. It was a pity. I'm gonna be quick with the pull or build analysis. I think Blaze is still a key damage dealer and possibly a future support in the burn element team. She's not particularly promising when working solo, and like we mentioned in the last episode, the impact of the whole burn team so far is not super standout. In terms of gameplay, the biggest problem here is that she's not any irreplaceable in daily. Usually not as straightforward as the usual damage dealers, she's lacking the gain from attack speed, which is limiting her buff game mode relevance. So really we can only cope for debuff game modes, where E-damage as the high quality damage option may be competitive. That said, while damage reduction is all over the place in new side stories, IS, it has never quite been in CC. It has always been attack decrease for us, and defense and resistance increase for enemies. Defense stats are so out of scale that KOB gets the crown every time instead of true and E-damage dealers. If the formula can change a bit in the future and the risks are more designed to be friendly towards element operators, we may see them rise to power more, but for now, they are just not the most promising system. Schedule and meta, basically the similar reasons as last episode, because at the end of the day, it's undeniable that the element pieces are in some degrees tied to one another, right? So that's gonna be it for this episode. Like I said, a trend of really good operators is on their way. I did make a quick adjustment to the scoreline from last episode based on my experience so far in IS-6. This video took much longer than I expected because I have been in and out of town recently, and by the time this video is out, I think Enterlich would be here as well. Anyways, thank you all for watching. Catch you guys in the next episode, hopefully very soon. Bye bye.